At the family photo shoot, my 7-year-old daughter sat in the front row, smiling like she finally belonged. A week later, the Christmas cards arrived. Every smile, every sparkle, perfectly framed except hers. She had been erased, photoshopped out like she never existed. She stared at the glossy paper, searching for herself, then looked up at me and whispered, "Dad, did I do something bad?" I did not yell. I did not cry. I just stayed quiet, because the next morning my mother opened her gift and went pale. Before I share my story, I would love to know you are here with me and listening to me. Comment hi below or tell me where you are from. I love hearing how far my story reaches. Sometimes knowing someone is there makes all the difference. Thank you. And now let me tell you everything. If my story touches you, please consider subscribing. I am Daniel Carter, and what happened to me and my little girl is not just about a photo. It is about how a family can erase you piece by piece until someone finally says enough. The snow had just started to fall over Boulder, Colorado, when Lily and I pulled into my parents' driveway. The air smelled like cinnamon and pine, the kind of scent that always tricked me into thinking the holidays meant peace. Inside, the house glowed with Christmas lights, strings of gold running along the banister, the same wreaths from every year hanging in perfect symmetry. My mom, Patricia, stood in the living room directing everyone like a stage manager. The family photo shoot at Pearl Street Plaza had just wrapped up that morning. Lily still hummed a carol in the back seat, proud of the yellow dress I had patched together with my own hands, a dress with small daisies sewn on the collar. She looked like sunshine in a family that preferred muted grays. "Daddy, do you think Grandma liked my dress?" she asked. I smiled. She should. "You looked beautiful." Lily grinned, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I wanted to believe it was true that beauty could be simple, soft, and enough. That night I told myself things would be different this year. I had been telling myself that every Christmas since I was old enough to notice the way my mother's gaze always skipped over me. The next morning, a box of freshly printed Christmas cards sat on the kitchen table. My parents and my sister Heather hovered around it like curators unveiling a masterpiece, the smell of baked quiche and coffee mixed with laughter. My mother beamed. "Look at this. Is it not perfect?" Lily darted forward before I could stop her reaching for a card. Her small fingers clutched the glossy paper eyes, scanning every face. Then her smile faltered. "Daddy, where am I?" The room went quiet. I stepped closer, gently taking the card. My throat tightened. The photo was flawless. Heather, her husband Mark, their 2 sons Ethan and Caleb right in the front row. My parents behind them, stiff but smiling. Even Grandma Ruth had been positioned neatly in the back corner. But Lily, who had sat right there that day front row between Ethan and Caleb, was gone. Not cropped, not hidden, erased. "Maybe it is just one card," I said softly, flipping through the stack. But each one was the same. Every glossy lie identical. Lily gone from all of them. My dad cleared his throat. "We just wanted it tidy this year." My mom added, "Her dress did not match the palette. You know coordination matters." Her voice was light, but the words sliced through me. I looked closer, and that was when I saw it. The shadow line behind Ethan, the repeated wood grain, the faint curve of a hand that had once rested where my daughter should have been. Someone had paid to have her removed, paid to make my daughter disappear. Lily's breathing quickened. "Maybe I am hiding," she whispered. "Maybe I am behind someone." Her voice cracked. The cards fell from her hands, scattering across the floor. "Why am I not there, Daddy?" I was smiling. I dropped to my knees, pulling her close. She was trembling, and I could feel her heart beating fast against mine. 7 years old and already learning what it felt like to be erased. Across the room, my mother adjusted a card on the mantel as if nothing were wrong. "The colors look so clean this year," she said. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message from the family group chat. finally looks uniform. Uniform like my child had been a stain they had scrubbed out. I looked around at the walls, the shelves lined with decades of family portraits. None of them showed me in the center, always on the edge or missing. It hit me that this was never just about a photo. It was the story of us who belonged and who did not. I did not yell. I did not give them the reaction they wanted. I only held Lily tighter, whispering, "You did not do anything wrong." Then I looked up at the ceiling, where the attic light flickered faintly above us. Our room, our place in this house, the highest, smallest, furthest from warmth. I stared at that light until it stopped flickering and said to myself, I will handle this my way. That night, when the house went quiet and Lily slept beside me, I lay awake staring at the slanted ceiling of our attic room. I thought about every photo on the walls downstairs every time I had been told to step aside to keep quiet to stay useful. The light bulb buzzed above me, a faint hum like a warning. Maybe this year something really would be different. It was time to put the picture back together, starting with us. I grew up in the same house where I now slept under the roof beams. The irony was not lost on me. My sister Heather was always the golden child. She played piano, took ballet, joined the debate team. My parents called her our pride. They called me our helper. While she practiced scales, I scrubbed the kitchen floor. While she twirled in satin shoes, I carried soup upstairs for Grandma Ruth after her hip surgery. Dad used to say, "You were born to work, son, not to waste." So I stopped asking for things. When I was 13, I wanted to join the photography club. I saved up coins from mowing lawns, bought a used camera at a garage sale, and asked if they would pay the $50 club fee. My dad did not even look up from his newspaper. Heather already has 3 activities this semester. You want to drain us? Linda laughed without looking away from her coffee. He is learning plenty from cleaning. Real life skills. That was the year I learned that some kids grow up collecting trophies and others collect chores. By the time Heather married Mark, my parents acted like they were sending off royalty. They gave her a down payment for a new house in Tucson. They bought them furniture, even paid to redo her kitchen. Grandma once mentioned money missing from her retirement fund years ago, but no one ever talked about it again. I stood there at the wedding reception, camera in hand, taking pictures I was not in. They thanked me for capturing the memories, but not for being part of them. When I fell in love years later and tried to build a life of my own, I thought maybe that would finally change things. I asked my parents for a small loan, just enough to cover the security deposit for an apartment. "You do not need that," Mom said flatly. "Stay here. There is space." What she meant was, stay here and keep cleaning, keep cooking, keep useful. I did not. I moved out anyway. It was a shoebox apartment, cheap furniture, creaky floors, but it was mine. Freedom does not need matching curtains. Then Lily came along, and for a while I believed we would be okay until her mother left. She said she was chasing something bigger. 7 months later, I saw a photo of her online with someone new somewhere warm. I packed our lives into boxes and drove back to Boulder, thinking at least Lily would have her grandparents, that I would have my old room. But when I opened the door, my room was not mine anymore. Fresh paint, new curtains, toy shelves lined against the wall. "Caleb's room," Mom said proudly, pointing to the glitter letters above the bed. Caleb was Heather's son. He visited on weekends. My childhood space had been remade for a child who barely stayed over. "Where do you want us to sleep?" I asked. Mom smiled like it was obvious. "The attic. It is fine up there." Fine. That word followed me like a curse. The attic was small hot in summer, freezing in winter, slanted ceilings, scraping my knuckles every time I made the bed. Lily was too young to notice at first, but kids grow fast. By 7, she began to ask questions I could not answer. Why do I not have a room like Ethan and Caleb? Why do we share? I smoothed her hair and told her it was just for now. But for now turned into years, Every paycheck I earned went into groceries bills and my parents' endless household contributions. I tried to save, but every time I got close, something broke: a car tire, a leak, an excuse. I started to understand that silence could be cruelty too. Not yelling, not hitting, but choosing who gets a room, a chance, a place in the photo. Downstairs, I would hear my mother brag about Heather's new countertop or the second remodel of her kitchen. I would hear laughter spill from the dining room while Lily and I ate in the attic because there was not enough space for everyone. That night, I stood on the creaking stairs listening to them talk about a new marble island they had helped Heather buy. I looked up at the low ceiling over my daughter's bed and thought, this ends here. I took out my phone and opened a message to a friend who managed a bar downtown. You still need night staff, I typed. I will take the shifts. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. I turned off the attic light, lay beside Lily, and listened to the quiet hum of the house below us. I whispered something to her. She turned over, clutching her stuffed rabbit. In that dim attic, I finally understood we had not just been erased from the photo. We had been erased from the family's map long ago. And now I was ready to draw a new one. The first night I started my double shift, the snow outside thickened to silence. Boulder slept beneath a white blanket while I sat in the attic balancing 2 schedules and a notebook of numbers. By day, I worked at the photo lab. By night, I would now clean tables and run the bar at the Iron Lantern. Between both, I had maybe 4 hours left to sleep, eat, or pretend I was not falling apart. My phone buzzed on the mattress, a confirmation text from the manager downtown. You are on for the night shift starting tomorrow. I typed back. See you at 9:45. The attic smelled faintly of old wood and laundry soap. Lily slept beside me, her hair sticking to her forehead. I watched the rise and fall of her shoulders, wondering how much longer we could live like this. I could handle exhaustion. What I could not handle was the way her eyes dimmed each time she saw her cousin's rooms downstairs. Each time she pretended it did not matter. When I finally went downstairs, the house was quiet except for the clock ticking in the hallway. Grandma Ruth's door was cracked open. A soft yellow glow spilled across the carpet. I knocked gently. Still awake always, she said without looking up. She sat in bed, propped against 2 pillows, glasses sliding down her nose, a crossword puzzle in her lap. I held out one of the Christmas cards. You saw this yet? She adjusted her glasses and studied it, her expression tightening. Lily was in this photo. Yes, now she is not. I told her everything. The silence, the excuses, the word uniform that kept echoing in my head. I told her about the attic, about the shifts at the bar, about wanting to save enough to move out. She listened without interrupting the way only she could. When I finished, she asked one question. Are you leaving because you were pushed out or because you are finally choosing peace? I stared at the floorboards. The easy answer would have been both, but the truth lodged in my throat. Maybe I do not know how to choose anything else. She nodded slowly, tapping the eraser of her pencil against the crossword. Peace does not always mean leaving, she said. Sometimes it means staying and changing the rules. She wrote the word truth into the puzzle. The letters fit perfectly. I looked at her, puzzled. What rules? She smiled faintly. The ones written by people who think kindness makes you weak. When I stood to leave, she stopped me. You are working nights now, just until you can save. She gave a single nod, but I caught her glance shift toward the nightstand. Inside, half hidden under papers, was a folder with black edges. A label read, Last Will and Testament. My pulse quickened, but I said nothing. I was not supposed to see that. As I reached the door, she added, You will not need to run yourself into the ground, Daniel. Leave the worrying to me. Her tone was calm and final, the same way she used to sound when I was a child, and she already knew the ending to my excuses. Upstairs, the attic felt colder. I sat on the edge of Lily's bed, staring at the faint light leaking from Grandma Ruth's window below. Somewhere in the distance, the town clock struck midnight. I pulled the blanket up to Lily's chin, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "It is almost over." Outside, the snow kept falling, burying every sound. I turned off the lamp and watched the shadows move across the ceiling. For the first time in years, I did not feel trapped in this house. I felt like something underneath its roof was shifting quietly, steadily in my favor. I did not yell. I did not beg. I would do this my way. And somehow I knew Grandma Ruth would too. Christmas morning broke sharp and white. Sunlight bounced off the snow, flooding through the tall windows of the Carter living room. The tree glittered with gold ribbons. The smell of pine and roasted ham filled the air. My parents had invited everyone early: Heather, her husband Mark, their 2 boys, even neighbors for brunch later. It was the kind of perfect tableau my mother lived for. Grandma Ruth sat quietly on the far end of the couch, wrapped in a blue shawl. She looked harmless, small even with her crossword book on the armrest beside her, but her eyes were alert. Lily sat next to me on the rug, playing with a broken ornament. She did not look up when my mother said, "Let us start with gifts." Her tone carried that chirpy command that filled the room with forced cheer. One by one, boxes were opened, perfume scarves, another candle from Heather's boutique. I was barely paying attention when Grandma Ruth cleared her throat. "There is one more," she said. She reached down and placed a small box on the coffee table wrapped in red paper and gold ribbon. On top was a tag that read, "From Grandma Ruth." My mother gave a little laugh. "Oh, you did not have to do that, Mom. How sweet." She peeled away the paper with manicured fingers. The laughter faded when she lifted the lid. Her face went pale. "What is this?" she muttered. Inside the box was a neat stack of documents, legal paper, embossed seal signature lines. The top page read, "Eviction notice." The room froze. Heather's boys stopped whispering. My father leaned over, squinting, taking the papers from my mother's hand. His face drained of color. "This says the property this house is being transferred to Daniel Carter." My chest tightened. "What?" Grandma Ruth folded her hands in her lap. "That is correct," she said evenly. "I have signed it effective immediately." My mother's voice cracked. "You cannot be serious. You cannot just give this place to him." "I can," Grandma Ruth said. "It is mine to give." Heather shot up from the couch. "Mom, this is insane. He has been manipulating you, working you up with guilt." Grandma Ruth's gaze did not waver. Connie's daughter once said the same thing before her father found out she had stolen from his retirement fund. "Should I tell everyone what I found in your credit statements?" Heather froze. "That is private." "It was my money," Grandma Ruth said. "Private does not apply." My father slammed the papers on the table. "You have gone too far, Mom. You are not thinking straight." Grandma Ruth turned her head toward him, her voice calm but cutting. "I am thinking clearer than I have in years. You have built a house on other people's backs. Daniel has done nothing but work and protect his child. This home should belong to someone who treats it as one." Patricia's eyes flicked to me, sharp with panic and hatred. "You think you are noble, Daniel? You are just a parasite. You never left because you needed us." I did not answer. I looked at Grandma Ruth. She smiled faintly as if to say, "Let them speak." The silence stretched until you could hear the snow tapping against the window. Then Grandma Ruth's lawyer, David Collins, stepped into the doorway. I had not even noticed him there until that moment. "Everything has been notarized," he said. "The transfer is legal and binding. Mrs. Carter has signed a new will as well." My mother's voice rose to a shriek. "A will? You have rewritten your will." Grandma Ruth nodded. "I have. Everything goes to Daniel and Lily, effective immediately." The color drained from the room. My mother's lips trembled. My father sat down hard on the arm of the couch, muttering under his breath. Heather's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, then at my mother. Something passed between them. A plan. A spark. Lily crawled closer to me, whispering, "Daddy, what is happening?" I took her hand. "Something fair, sweetheart. Finally something fair." Grandma Ruth turned to my parents one last time. "You spent years teaching this family what appearances cost. Maybe now you will learn what truth is worth." No one spoke. The only sound was the crackle of the fire and the faint hum of the Christmas lights. As I looked around the room, at the glossy cards on the mantel, at the faces frozen between anger and disbelief, I realized this holiday would not be remembered for its gifts or laughter. It would be remembered for the moment everything shifted. For years I had been the ghost in their pictures, standing at the edge of every frame. But that morning, my name was written on the deed to the very house that had erased me. Christmas did not bring a miracle that year. It brought something sharper justice wrapped in red paper and sealed with a notary stamp. And as the snow kept falling outside, I finally understood what Grandma Ruth meant the night before. Peace does not always mean leaving. Sometimes it means staying long enough to reclaim what should have been yours all along. A week after Christmas, the house turned colder than the snow outside. The laughter from that morning was gone, replaced by a strange, pressing quiet. My parents whispered in the kitchen, their voices sharp but low, like the sound of knives being wrapped in cloth. I did not need to hear the words to know they were plotting something. You could feel it in the air, the way silence starts to hum when hate begins to ferment. By mid-morning, the sound came. 3 knocks, firm official. When I opened the door, 2 police officers stood on the porch, their uniforms dusted with snow. Between them was a woman in a dark coat holding a clipboard. She introduced herself as from Adult Protective Services. The shorter officer spoke first. "We received a report of potential elder abuse at this address." For a moment, my brain refused to process the words. Then I saw movement behind me, my mother stepping into view with her best worried face. "We just want Mom safe," she said, hand clutching her chest as if she had been forced into this out of concern. My stomach twisted. They had done it. They had actually called the police on me. The taller officer asked to speak with me privately. They led me into the den while the APS worker stayed with my parents. My father stood in the corner pretending to pace from anxiety, but his eyes flicked toward me with satisfaction. "Do you live in this house full-time?" one officer asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you provide care for Mrs. Ruth Carter?" "Yes, she is my grandmother. I help when she asks. She is independent." They scribbled notes. "Do you have access to her financial accounts?" "No, she manages her own finances. She is sharper than any of us." I told them about the new deed, how Grandma Ruth had called her lawyer herself, how everything had been done in the open with witnesses. I handed them David Collins' card. Outside the door, I could hear my mother's voice rising and falling in a rehearsed rhythm. Words like confused, influenced, taken advantage of. It was surreal hearing her try to rewrite the story in real time, like watching someone edit a photo while you are still in the frame. When the officers finished with me, they said they would need to speak to Grandma Ruth next. I led them down the hall to her room. The door was closed, but a light glowed underneath. I knocked softly and opened it. Grandma Ruth was sitting upright, her shawl wrapped tight, glasses perched on her nose. "Come in," she said, voice calm. The APS worker explained why they were there. Grandma Ruth listened without interrupting, then reached to her nightstand and pulled out a folder. "You will find my recent medical and cognitive evaluations inside," she said. "Dated 2 weeks ago. My doctor confirmed I am perfectly sound." The worker blinked, taken off guard. Grandma Ruth continued. "I called my attorney myself. I made every decision of my own free will. If you doubt that, you can ask him." He was there. Right on cue, a knock echoed down the hall. David Collins stepped in, coat dusted with snow, holding a small flash drive. "I brought the security footage from the day of the signing," he said. He set up his laptop on the dresser. The video showed my father at the front door greeting David, offering him coffee. My mother in the background, smiling for the camera. Grandma Ruth seated at the dining table, calm and steady, reading each page before signing. The timestamp was clear, her voice audible. When the footage ended, the room was silent, except for the faint hiss of the heater. The APS worker looked up from her clipboard. "Mrs. Carter, everything appears in order." Grandma Ruth nodded, then turned toward the officers. "Before you go, there is something else you should know. The only person being mistreated here is not me. It is my great-granddaughter, the 7-year-old you have seen upstairs, the one who was erased from our family Christmas cards because her dress did not match their color scheme." Her voice did not rise, but it cut through the room like glass. I felt tears burn my eyes. For once, someone said it out loud, the cruelty everyone else had tried to frame as family tradition. The officers glanced at each other, unsure what to say. My parents stood frozen in the hallway. My mother's mouth opened, but no words came out. My father's hand twitched at his side. When they finally left, the officers shook my hand and said, "We are satisfied there is no abuse here," the APS worker added softly. "Seems to me your grandmother is the one protecting everyone else." As the front door shut, I let out a breath I did not know I had been holding. I turned to Grandma Ruth, but she was already folding the documents neatly back into their folder. "They will not stop," she said. "You know that." I did. Behind us, my parents retreated into the kitchen, whispering again. I caught fragments. "If we do not get it back, if he keeps it." Their voices were shaking now, not from guilt, but from fear. That night I lay awake in the attic, listening to the creaks in the floor below. I thought the storm had passed, but as the wind howled outside, I realized something else was building. Some storms do not end with thunder. They end with silence. And silence in this house was never safety. The snow melted into gray slush by the next evening. Inside, the air felt heavy, full of things unsaid. We sat down for dinner, the first one since the investigation. The clinking of forks against plates was the only sound. Lily sat beside me, pushing peas around her dish. Grandma Ruth was at the head of the table, quiet but watchful. My parents sat across from us, pretending to eat. Then Lily's hand slipped. Her glass of water tipped, spilling across the table and dripping onto the floor. The sound was small, but the explosion came anyway. "For God's sake, Lily!" Patricia snapped, standing so fast her chair screeched. "You cannot do one thing right." Robert's voice joined hers, low and venomous, not surprised. Just like her father. Clumsy, useless, always making a mess. I stood. "That is enough." My mother turned, smiling, that cold smile she used to wear when she scolded me as a child. "Oh, so now you talk back. You think because you have got a few papers, you are the man of this house. You are a guest here, Daniel. Do not forget it." "I am not a guest," I said quietly. "You are." Her expression cracked. "You will regret this. We will make sure of it. You think you can hide behind that old woman and your sob story? We will get our house back and our granddaughter." Lily pressed against my leg, trembling. "Daddy." I bent down, my voice steady but low. "Go to Grandma, honey." Grandma Ruth rose from her chair, eyes sharp as flint. "That is enough," she said. "This ends now." She picked up the phone on the sideboard and dialed. Her tone was composed, deliberate. "Dave, it is Ruth. I need to file a protective order. Tonight." No one moved. My mother's face went pale. "You would not dare." Grandma Ruth hung up. "I already have." That night felt endless. The wind outside battered the shutters. Lily cried herself to sleep in my arms while Grandma Ruth sat awake downstairs, the phone pressed to her ear for hours, calling in every favor she had left. By morning, the front door rattled with another knock. 2 police officers stood there again, snow on their boots. My mother rushed forward, feigning surprise. "Oh, not this again." "Ma'am," one officer interrupted. "We are here to deliver a court order effective immediately. You and Mr. Carter are to vacate the premises within 72 hours. This is a temporary no-contact order filed by Mrs. Ruth Carter and Mr. Daniel Carter." The color drained from both their faces. My father sputtered something about unfair and misunderstanding. My mother tried tears next. None of it mattered. As they began to pack, the sound of drawers slamming echoed through the house. Heather showed up halfway through, red-faced and demanding answers. "You cannot just throw them out," she shouted. Grandma Ruth looked at her calmly. "You touch one thing that is not yours, and I will send your credit card records to the court. Shall we start with the $50,000 from my retirement account?" Heather froze. Then, without another word, she left. By evening, the house was quiet again, except for the rustle of suitcases. My parents stood by the door, coats zipped, faces drawn tight with fury. My mother paused, turning to me. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You think you have won, you have not. One day Lily will know what you did, that you tore this family apart." I did not answer. I just held the door open. They stepped into the snow, and for a long moment, none of us spoke. Then the door clicked shut, and the silence that followed was the first peace I had felt in years. That night, I tucked Lily into bed. She slept through until morning. Her first unbroken sleep since before the photo shoot. I stood at the window watching the moonlight spill across the snow-covered yard. A faint creak sounded from the porch below. I grabbed a flashlight, opened the door, and stepped outside. The porch was empty, but something fluttered near my feet, a torn photograph. I picked it up. It was the old family picture edges frayed the spot where Lily and I once sat cut clean out. The wind lifted the paper from my hand and carried it into the dark. I watched it disappear against the white sky. Then I went back inside, closed the door, and locked it. For the first time, this house felt like it belonged to me. The storm outside had broken, leaving only stillness. But even as I breathed that quiet air, I knew the silence was not an ending. It was only the pause before whatever came next. A month after my parents left, Grandma Ruth told me it was time for a fresh start. We packed what we needed and moved to Santa Fe, where an old friend of hers rented us a small studio space. 7 months after the order, mornings in Santa Fe began with sunlight spilling through the front windows of Carter Portrait Studio. The air smelled like dust and pine. I had learned to breathe without waiting for the next blow. That day, a family came in for portraits. The mother, nervous about symmetry, looked at her son and asked, "Can you edit him out for one just so it looks cleaner?" For a moment, I could not speak. I saw Lily in that yellow daisy dress again, the empty space where she should have been. I steadied my voice. "Sorry, I do not do that kind of edit." The woman blinked, confused, then left. When the door shut, I stood there alone, feeling the weight of every erased face I had ever known. Behind my desk hung the Christmas photo from last year, the one without Lily. I kept it as proof, not memory. Justice. I have learned does not always roar. Sometimes it just stays quiet long enough to outlast the noise. That evening I drove home. Lily was in her room painting her walls a pale yellow, humming softly. Grandma Ruth sat in the living room, glasses low on her nose, sunlight warming her silver hair. My phone buzzed a cousin from Tucson. "Your folks got evicted from the place they were renting in Tucson. Missed payments. Landlord finally kicked them out. She said she could not." I did not feel triumph, only an ache that had nowhere to go. "Thanks," I said and hung up. Grandma Ruth watched me for a moment, then opened her drawer and handed me a small bank book. "Use this to fix the roof and start Lily's college fund." "Why me?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Because you never wanted to win, Daniel. You just wanted to belong. People like that deserve to keep their house." Later, while cleaning, I found a box of old photos from my mother's drawer, everyone trimmed, so my face disappeared. It did not even sting. It just made sense. I had been cut out long before the Christmas card. Rain began to tap the windows. Lily slept under her yellow ceiling. Grandma Ruth dozed by the fire. I sat between them, breathing the smell of wet earth, realizing I no longer lived in reaction to anyone. For the first time, I thanked the storm that tore us apart. It made room for a life that was real. Everything they lost became space for us to grow. I thought it was the end, but it was the beginning of a picture no one could edit again. Winter came back soft and white. The roof no longer leaked. The walls carried Lily's laughter like music. Grandma Ruth had grown frailer, but her eyes stayed clear. One morning, Lily asked Dad, should we invite Grandma and Grandpa to take pictures with us this Christmas? I paused, searching her face. Some people do not want to be in your picture, I said gently. And sometimes that is okay. She nodded, already at peace. I hung our new photo above the mantel. Me, Lily, and Grandma Ruth on the porch in afternoon light. Not perfect, not posed, but true. That afternoon, I found an unmarked envelope in the mailbox. Inside was the original Christmas photo before they had erased Lily. Someone, maybe Heather, had sent it back. I showed it to Lily. She traced her tiny face and whispered, "I am right there." "You always were," I said. I framed it beside our new one, past and present side by side, both honest. Through the window, I saw an old sedan parked across the street. My mother sat inside watching the house. She did not come to the door. I did not wave. I felt no hate, just understanding. Some lessons must be learned outside the frame. Grandma Ruth called softly, "You did right, Daniel." Lily ran in, tugging my sleeve. "Let us take another picture, Dad, this time with the yellow room." We stood on the porch, the camera timer blinking red. Grandma Ruth smiled, Lily laughed, and I finally breathed. The shutter clicked. A sound that once meant erasure now meant proof. Inside, I placed the new photo crooked on the wall and left it that way. I did not need perfection. I needed truth. Justice, I realized, is not about punishment. It is the freedom to exist unedited. And every morning, when light moves across those frames, I know we have built something that lasts a home, where no one has to fight to stay in the picture. Sometimes life does not fall apart. It finally shows you who is holding the scissors. For years, I thought being cut out of the frame meant I was not good enough to be in it. Now I understand some pictures were never meant to hold the truth. And maybe that is okay, because the truth, once it stands on its own, does not need permission to exist. When I look at the photos on our wall now, one crooked one faded, both real, I do not see loss anymore. I see proof. Proof that healing does not always look like forgiveness, and that peace is not loud. It is the quiet that comes when you no longer explain your worth to anyone. I see my daughter growing up in a home that feels solid beneath her feet. I see my grandmother, fragile but fierce, teaching me that love is not what you inherit, it is what you protect. And I see myself finally steady in the picture. Not perfect, not framed for show, but present. If you have ever been erased, overlooked, or made to feel like you did not belong in your own story, this is for you. You do not have to scream to prove you exist. Just keep standing in your truth until the world learns to focus. Before you go, I would love to know you are here with me. Say hi in the comments or tell me where you are listening from. I want to know how far this story can reach, how many hearts are learning to rebuild their own frames. And if my story spoke to something inside you, you hit subscribe. Not for me, but for every person who has been told they do not fit in the picture. Because we do. We always did. Now every time the morning light hits our wall of photographs, I whisper the same thing to myself and to Lily. we are still here, and no one is erasing us.